Alright, what is up folks? So I apologize if this video is uploaded a little bit late. This is because I'm in the extreme rural side of China. I mean the remote countryside. It's pretty empty and desolate around here. I can't get any signals on my cell phone. I've been having a lot of issues connecting to the internet. So for a while I couldn't even edit any of my videos. But, I've learned so much. I'm spending roughly a week in the rural countryside of China. And I noticed something extremely important about, living in the countryside versus, the rise of mega cities. And, I'm starting to piece everything together. I'm connecting all the dots. And yes, I know the title sounds a little bit brutal, right? I'm saying that there are no Chinese baddies in the countryside. I'll tell you guys exactly why. So right now, this village I'm currently staying at, there might be 10,000 people, I would say at most. Yes, pretty run down. Like the buildings they're in horrible condition. That building, it could be 75 years old. A lot of it has been abandoned, has been completely emptied out. The entire landscape is very dystopian, and I realized something that's extremely important. There's a major void, right, when you're living in the countryside. So there used to be so many schools around this area, and that must be 30, 40, 50 years ago. There used to be middle schools here, high schools, primary schools, and nowadays, even the last kindergarten, even the last daycare center has all closed down. Where have all the children gone? Well, obviously China has had, a falling birth rate for a very, very long time, so there are fewer and fewer younger people, but still there should be some children left, right? So where are all the young people, right? All the young people, they have all moved into the mega cities. So right now I'm in the countryside of the Sichuan province, and the vast majority of young people, they have all either moved to the mega city of Chongqing, which has 32 million people, or they have moved to the city of Chengdu, which has 21 million people. It's pretty insane to think about. So those two cities, they combine for 53 million people. So with the rise of these two mega cities in the Sichuan province, in the center of China, has completely destroyed the countryside, right? I'm not saying that, like say if you go to a small village, you can't find any pretty Chinese woman. I would say one of the finest Chinese baddies back in her prime. I used to watch all the new Chinese series featuring Zhao Liying, and she was one of the most famous actresses at the time, and she's from the extreme remoteness, she's from the countryside. And I would say my favorite show from back then was Qing Yunzhi, when Zhao Liying, she played the character BL, and her in the green dress and the bangs, and she was a total babe. But here's the thing, right? Obviously she doesn't live in the countryside anymore. What has happened, right, with the rapid advancement of technologies and the rapid rise of all of these mega cities has completely sucked the life out of the countryside. All the young people, right, they're seeing all these opportunities in the capital, in all these mega cities, and they look at what the rural countryside has to offer. Either I stay here and raise some pigs and pick some vegetable, either I make 1,000, 2,000 or 3,000 yuan a month at best, or maybe I can move to the big city and have my shot at the stardom, right? So especially for the the young and attractive woman, let's say some women have aspirations, let's say, to be internet famous. They want to be casted as an actress, they want to become a dancer, they want to become a model. But if you stay in a god-forsaken place like this, which agent is going to notice you, right? In order for you to have a shot at a successful career as a model or actress, right, you have to move to the big city, right? Another factor to consider is that obviously, if you live in a village of 10,000 people, I mean, there are not going to be too many Chinese baddies out here, but if you go to the big city, there's going to be A's and 9's and 10's. There's going to be super fit, super gorgeous, super tall Chinese women everywhere you go. It's just a numbers game. And obviously this has had massive consequences. And a great example is, for example, if you look at the country of South Korea, right, the country with the lowest fertility rate in the world. So South Korea has roughly 51 million people, and in the capital of Seoul, there's roughly 26 million. So over 50% of the population, they all live in the national capital region. And this is a massive concern because if you, let's say, book a vacation to South Korea, if you land in Seoul, you'll see a bunch of young people, you'll see children, obviously, you see daycares, you see kindergartens. But as soon as you, let's say, take a train, right, or take the bus, and if you leave the capital and go to the countryside, you will see that the scene is extremely depressing because there are some villages and counties in South Korea where it has been 10, 20, 30, 40 years since these elderlies they have heard the sound from any children at all. So it's very normal to go to a village in South Korea where the average age of the villager is 75 or 80 years old, and China is probably only 10 or 15 years behind South Korea or Japan at the rate China is going. Just look at those buildings over there, they're completely falling apart. all the young residents have left, right? It's only the old pensioners that remains. And once these old people kick the bucket, all of China's countryside will completely disappear into oblivion. And one thing you have to realize is this. I did mention before, right, on my video about, true love takes one stupid person and one smart person, right? Two smartasses cannot fall in love with each other. True love takes one idiot. If you go to the remote countryside, what I have noticed is that there are virtually no divorces here, right? I'm not saying that, it doesn't happen, but it's extremely rare. It could be, 3% or 5% of the time. But if you go to a mega city, if you go to Chongqing or Chengdu in the Sichuan province, it's probably 60, 70, or even 75%, right? And part of the reason, just like I mentioned, right, any young people that remains, right, in this local village of, let's say, 10,000 people, right, and let's say, if they're not happy, right, so if the woman is thinking that, I'm not happy with my husband, if I choose to get divorced, what option is there, right? Do you want to look at your neighbor, Mr. Lee, who is, 5'3" with a droopy nose, and he has an extremely smelly armpit? Because that's pretty much your only option. There are only so many bachelors in a place like this. There are virtually no young people left. Or perhaps you can choose your cousin's friend, Mr. Wang, who basically is a little bit retarded, and he walks with a limp, so he's like this all the time. And when he's talking, he's like, what? I know it sounds crazy, but that's a massive contributing factor, right? Because there's a severe shortage of a high-value man in these areas, and it's unfortunate to say because the vast majority of the time it's the woman that files for divorce. And the reason why, honestly, I think that when you go to the countryside of China, there are virtually no divorces. Is that women, when they're looking at their options, they just think, oh shit, I'm just stuck with my husband. He might not be the best man in the world. I might not be in a happy or stable relationship or marriage. But what other option is there for me, right? It's not really any choice for me to choose. So I'm just stuck this way, and that's it. We'll just stay all the way married until the end. And perhaps, this is actually all for the better. But think about what happens. Let's say if this same woman, she's 30 years old, she's not happy with her marriage. Let's say if she lived in the big city, if she lived in Chongqing or Chengdu, where there's 20 million or 32 million people, and as soon as she gets into a little argument, as soon as she runs into a bad phase with her husband, as soon as she thinks that she's unhappy, and obviously the first thing she's going to do is that she's going to file for divorce. Because when you live in a mega city with 20, 30 million people, there's going to be super tall, super good looking, super rich, super successful men everywhere. And it's the same thing for both man and woman. This is a massive crisis, right? And I did mention before with Fermi's paradox, perhaps the rise of technology and the rise of mega cities, this could be the final filter that humanity cannot surpass. It's the same thing, right? If you're a middle-aged, successful man, and if you live in the mega city, you will see super hot, super attractive women as you're walking down the street every single day. So you're constantly tempted to cheat on your wife, right? But let's say, if you lived in the countryside, if you just grew some vegetables, you had some chickens, some ducks, and pigs, you're going to think that, oh, well, if I divorce my wife, my only other option is to marry my neighbor who's just 2 doors down, and she weighs, 275 pounds. And she has the face of a African hyena, so I might as well, stay with my wife, even though she's mid, even though we get into fights all the time. But this is the best option when I'm living in the countryside. I think it's extremely important for people to make the connection here. There's no exact term for this. Perhaps you can call it, the Chad and Stacy's effect. When you're living in the middle of nowhere, right? When you're just stuck in your ways, a lot of people will say, if I get divorced or separated, there's not going to be a better option. But when people move to the big city, when there's a bunch of Chad and Stacy's everywhere, both man and woman are going to struggle 100%, right? Because who isn't going to be tempted, right? Perhaps a life way back in the day, 50, 60, 70 years ago, where the vast majority of the population in China lived like this, right? When they all lived in the countryside, perhaps life was easier and simpler. Perhaps that was the correct way to live. Things have certainly changed over the years, and this topic is extremely important to discuss, and we'll keep coming back to this topic about the rise of mega cities and how it has changed our lives forever, and we'll keep making the connection so you guys can see the entire picture. So thank you guys so much for staying all the way till the end. I apologize once again if there's going to be delays on this channel with uploads, because I am having trouble connecting to the internet. So thank you guys so much. See you guys next time.